The grand ballroom of the Latte World Tower in Seoul shimmered under the glow of modern LED lights, each beam reflecting the sophistication and prestige of the attendees. Tonight wasn't just any gathering. It was a charity gala where South Korea's elite came not just to donate, but to be seen. The air carried the scent of luxury perfumes and fine soju, blending with the polished conversations of K-pop moguls, entertainment executives, and high-profile influencers. Some guests came for the networking, others for the spectacle, and then there were those who came for the drama. The kind of subtle but calculated social maneuvering that could make or break a reputation overnight. Among the sea of tailored suits and dazzling handbocks, Jungkook BTS stood apart. Not because he tried to, but quite the opposite. At 26, he was already a global icon, his presence impossible to ignore. He had the charisma of a superstar, but carried himself with a quiet, reserved energy, undeniably composed. He wasn't there to impress or play politics, but that didn't mean the room wasn't watching him. "That's him, right?" whispered a woman in a deep crimson hanbok, leaning slightly toward her companion. "Yeah, he's grown so much," the man beside her replied, glancing at Jungkook over the rim of his soju glass. "Hard to believe he's been in the industry for over a decade. I wonder if he's like the others in BTS." Someone else murmured, their voice just low enough to seem discreet, but loud enough to be overheard. "That's the question, isn't it?" From the moment Jungkook debuted with BTS, the world had speculated about him. Was he just another idol? Or was he something more? Would he step into solo ventures? Or would he remain in the shadow of the group's legacy? What no one had considered, what no one had even thought to ask, was who Jungkook actually was across the room. A man adjusted his tie, watching Jungkook with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. Kim Min-jae, a seasoned entertainment reporter with a well-known disdain for idol culture, had built his career on sharp commentary and blistering takedowns. He had spent years deconstructing the idol industry, picking apart their every move and turning them into headlines. Now, standing at the bar, swirling his glass absent-mindedly, he saw an opportunity. Min-jae wasn't just any guest. He was a calculated presence, the kind of person who always seemed to be where the conversation was hottest. And tonight, the conversation was hottest around Jungkook. Idols always fold when you hit them with a little reality, Min-jae had once said on his podcast, discussing the pressures of the K-pop industry. They've never had to fight for anything. They crack under pressure. But tonight, Min-jae wasn't behind a microphone. He was in the same room, just a few steps away, and if he played his cards right, he could make Jungkook his next headline. So he set his glass down, straightened his cuffs, and started walking toward him. But Jungkook wasn't the easy target Min-jae thought he was. Kim Min-jae moved through the crowd with the ease of a man who had spent years navigating rooms like this. He was used to being the smartest person in the conversation, the one who could dismantle an argument with a well-placed smirk or a pointed remark. But tonight, he wasn't looking for a debate. He was looking for a moment. And Jungkook? He was the perfect target. Min-jae knew the rules of high society. You don't outright insult someone. You nudge them. You prod them in front of an audience. You make a comment just biting enough to cut, but just lighthearted enough to pass as banter. It was an art form, and Min-jae was a master. Reaching Jungkook, he stopped just close enough to command attention, but not so close as to seem aggressive. The conversations around them softened, as if people sensed something was about to happen. With a practiced smirk, Min-jae raised his glass in a mock toast. "Well, if it isn't the golden magne himself," he said, his voice smooth, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. That a couple of guests exchanged glances. Some chuckled softly, unsure whether to engage. Others sipped their drinks, eyes flickering between Min-jae and Jungkook, waiting to see how the idol would respond. Jungkook didn't react. He barely acknowledged the remark. Min-jae, unfazed, took a slow sip of his drink before continuing. Must be nice, he mused, drawing out the words, growing up in the spotlight, never knowing a day of struggle. I imagine life's been effortless. A few hushed chuckles rippled through the group. It wasn't an outright attack, but it was enough to stir the air around them. Jungkook remained still. If the words affected him, he didn't show it. Min-jae tilted his head slightly, watching him. He had seen idols much older than Jungkook squirm under a little pressure, stumble over their words, try to laugh off the discomfort. But the young BTS member didn't fidget. He didn't force a smile. He just stood there, unreadable. Min-jae took another sip, letting the silence stretch before delivering the next line. You ever had a real problem, Jungkook? He let the question linger. Ever had to worry about rent? About your future? Or have you always known you could just sing a song and get whatever you want? This time, the laughter was a little louder. Not from the whole room, just a handful of people who saw the moment for what it was, a test. Jungkook finally shifted. Not in discomfort, not in anger, but with a slow, measured breath as if weighing the weight of the moment. Min-jae felt the energy shift. This was it. The moment where the idol either stumbled or walked away, proving Minji's point without him having to say another word. But something in Jungkook's expression flickered. Not defeat, not amusement, something else entirely. And then for the first time he spoke. And Min-jae would regret pushing him. For a moment, the air in the ballroom felt heavy, like everyone was waiting for something they weren't sure was coming. Jungkook, the global superstar, the subject of endless speculation, had just been challenged in front of a room full of the most powerful people in the industry. But he didn't react the way they expected. He didn't laugh nervously. He didn't glance around for help. He didn't brush it off like an idol trained in damage control. Instead, he let the silence stretch, let Minji's words sit there, unchallenged, just long enough to make the reporter think he had won. Then, finally, he spoke. You know, Mr. Min-jae, Jungkook said, his voice calm and steady, I could pretend your question is original, but it's not. People have been saying things like that to me since I was a teenager. They think fame cancels out struggle, that success means life is easy. The shift in the room was immediate. A few guests who had been chuckling earlier stopped. Others leaned in slightly, suddenly aware that this wasn't going to be the response they had expected. Minji's smirk faltered just a fraction. Jungkook wasn't speaking just to him anymore. He was speaking to everyone. I didn't choose this life, he continued, his expression unreadable. I didn't ask for cameras in my face before I was old enough to drive. I didn't sign up for every moment of my youth to be dissected, criticized, and turned into a headline. Someone near the bar shifted awkwardly, setting their glass down with a quiet clink. Jungkook exhaled softly, then took a single step forward. Not aggressive, not defensive, just present. You say I've never had to struggle? Fine. Let's talk about struggle. His tone never rose, but the weight behind it did. Min-jae blinked. Imagine being 15 and watching grown adults on national television make jokes about you, knowing you can't say a word back. Imagine walking into a room and realizing half the people there already hate you because of your profession. Imagine knowing that no matter what you do, people will assume they know who you are before you ever open your mouth. A murmur rippled through the room. Not loud, just there. Min-jae started to say something, but Jungkook cut him off, not with force, but with a simple, unshaken truth. No, I've never had to worry about rent. I've never wondered where my next meal would come from. But don't mistake that for never knowing what it's like to feel completely alone in a crowded room. And just like that, the balance shifted. Min-jae, the seasoned reporter who had spent years leading the conversation, suddenly found himself in unfamiliar territory. Because Jungkook wasn't playing the role he had expected. And for the first time in years, people in that room, and soon the world, would actually hear Jungkook, not just talk about him. The silence that followed wasn't just the absence of laughter. It was thick, the kind that made people shift in their seats, suddenly unsure of the rules of engagement. Min Jae stood frozen for a second too long, his smirk now gone. He had walked into this expecting a soundbite, something he could twist, mock, spin into another viral takedown. But instead, he had given Jungkook something much more powerful, a moment. Then, from the back of the room, a single clap, not sarcastic, not mocking, just recognition. A second later, another, then another. Within seconds, the slow, deliberate applause spread, rippling across the ballroom. It wasn't an eruption of cheers. This wasn't a concert, but it was genuine. And that, more than anything, was what made it powerful. Min Jae swallowed, shifting slightly. He could feel the weight of 100 gazes on him now, not with admiration, but scrutiny. A waiter near the drinks table discreetly pulled out his phone, angling it just enough to capture what was happening. He wasn't alone. Several journalists, influencers, and high-profile guests had already started recording. This moment wasn't staying in that ballroom. The first video hit Twitter at 11:47 p.m., a grainy, slightly shaky clip of Jungkook's speech. Then another, and another. Within an hour, the hashtag JungkookBTS trended, not just in South Korea, but worldwide. Some highlighted his poise. Others focused on specific lines. Don't mistake privilege for never knowing what it's like to feel alone in a crowded room. A viral tweet with over 300,000 likes read. Whether you're a fan or not, the man just cooked a professional reporter on his own turf. A TikTok comment with 1.2 million views declared. The media machine scrambled to catch up. Conservative outlets praised him. Liberal ones tried to downplay the significance, calling it a well-rehearsed PR moment. But even the most cynical journalists had to admit, it didn't feel rehearsed. It felt real. Even celebrities got in on the conversation. Some defended Min Jae, saying he was just asking a fair question. Others, including a few unexpected names, voiced their respect. But perhaps the most surprising reaction came from young people. Teenagers and college students who had never paid much attention to Jungkook before. For once, this isn't about being an idol. It's about a person who's been dragged through the mud his whole life, finally getting to speak for himself. A TikTok video that hit 5 million views overnight stated. Meanwhile, Min Jae went silent. He refused interview requests, ignored emails, and didn't tweet. The man who had built his career on controlling the narrative was suddenly at the center of one he couldn't escape. That'd be why morning, the entire country was talking about Jungkook, not as an extension of BTS, but as his own person. And for the first time, that conversation wasn't being dictated by the media. It was being shaped by the people. WY Sunrise. The moment had already outgrown the ballroom. It was everywhere, on morning talk shows and op-eds across social media. News anchors dissected every second of the exchange, while entertainment analysts scrambled to assign meaning to it. Some praised Jungkook's composure under pressure. Others called it a media stunt. But regardless of opinion, one thing was clear. People were talking on KBS. A panel of commentators nodded approvingly. The man handled himself better than most veterans in the industry today. On MBC, a different perspective emerged. Look, no one's saying he's a bad person, but let's not pretend he's struggling the way average Koreans are. Even the Korea Herald published an editorial. A new Jungkook rises. An unexpected moment in the spotlight. The conversation wasn't just about what he said. It was about who was reacting. Some doubled down, claiming that Jungkook was just playing the victim. What does he know about real hardship? Tweeted a well-known critic. Others argued that this moment exposed a deeper hypocrisy. Why is it okay to attack an idol but not anyone else? One influencer asked. But the most surprising voices came from those who had never defended him before. I'm not a BTS fan, but this was different. He handled that better than I would have, one netizen commented. The debate even spilled into variety shows where comedians treaded carefully. Look, I'll be honest, one host admitted, I was ready to roast him, but damn, that was a solid response. Even celebrities weighed in. Some praised him, others dismissed it. A well-known actress tweeted, Idol pretends to have problems, and the internet eats it up. What else is new? But then came the responses. So you can advocate for mental health when it's convenient, but not when it's someone you don't like. That was the moment the conversation shifted. The biggest surprise came from Gen Z and millennials, many of whom had never paid much attention to Jungkook before. Doesn't matter who he is. That hit deep, a TikTok comment with 100K likes read. People act like being famous means you can't feel isolated. That's not how it works, a viral Instagram post stated. Suddenly, Jungkook wasn't just an idol. He had become something else, a symbol, a moment, a shift. No one knew yet what it meant, but what they did know was that for the first time in years, people were seeing him as his own person. And that was something no one had planned for. The media storm raged on for days. Some networks tried to frame the moment as a one-time anomaly, while others attempted to stretch it into something bigger, a cultural shift, a sign of a new figure emerging. But Jungkook? He didn't engage. No interviews, no statements, no carefully worded social media posts. He simply moved forward, and that in itself sent a message because this wasn't just about Jungkook. It was about perception, about how easy it is to judge people we've never met, about how a profession can become a prison before you ever get a chance to define yourself. It was about how public figures, especially those born into fame, are often treated as symbols rather than human beings. Some people changed their minds about Jungkook that night. Others didn't. But for the first time in years, people actually saw him, not as an extension of BTS, not as a headline, but as a young man standing on his own. And whether they liked him or not, they had to admit, he had earned his moment. People are more than the labels placed on them, more than the assumptions made about them. And sometimes, the best way to challenge a narrative isn't through outrage or defensiveness. It's through quiet, undeniable truth. Jungkook didn't argue. He didn't attack. He simply spoke. And in doing so, he forced people to listen. Not everyone will get that opportunity. But when the moment comes, when someone questions your worth, your experiences, your place in the world, you have a choice. You can shrink, or you can stand your ground and make them see you. What do you think? Should people be judged based on their profession, or should they be given a fair chance to define themselves? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this story interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. What do you think? Should people be judged based on their profession, or should they be given a fair chance to define themselves? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this story interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. The aftermath of that night was nothing short of a cultural earthquake. Jungkook's words resonated far beyond the glittering walls of the Lotte World Tower. Social media platforms were flooded with clips of his speech, each frame dissected, analyzed, and shared millions of times. Memes, think pieces, and heartfelt posts flooded timelines, turning Jungkook into a symbol of resilience and authenticity. For weeks, the incident dominated headlines. Talk shows dedicated entire segments to discussing the implications of his words. Is this the dawn of a new era for idols? One host asked, while another pondered, Has Jungkook redefined what it means to be a celebrity in the modern age? Even outside South Korea, the impact was undeniable. International media outlets picked up the story, with headlines like Jungkook BTS silences critic with poise and truth, and the night the world saw Jungkook for who he really is. Fans and non-fans alike found themselves drawn to his message, sparking global conversations about mental health, fame, and the pressures of living under constant scrutiny. Meanwhile, Kim Min-jae, the reporter who had tried to humiliate Jungkook, became the subject of intense backlash. His social media accounts were flooded with comments ranging from criticism to outright condemnation. Hashtags like hashtag Minji apologize and hashtag respect Jungkook trended for days. Despite his attempts to lay low, the pressure became too much. A week after the incident, he released a brief statement. "I regret the way I approached the situation at the gala. My intention was never to cause harm, but I realize now that my words were inappropriate. I respect Jungkook's response and hope this moment encourages more meaningful conversations about the challenges faced by public figures." The statement did little to quell the outrage, but it marked the end of Minji's dominance in the entertainment journalism world. His credibility took a hit, and his once popular podcast saw a sharp decline in listeners that, on the other hand, Jungkook's star only continued to rise. Brands clamored to work with him, not just for his global appeal, but for the authenticity he had displayed. Mental health organizations reached out, inviting him to speak at events and collaborate on campaigns. Even his fellow BTS members expressed their pride, with RM stating in an interview, "Jungkook has always been strong, but that night, he showed the world a different side of himself, one that we've always known and admired." Despite the overwhelming attention, Jungkook remained characteristically humble. He didn't capitalize on the moment with interviews or public appearances. Instead, he returned to his work, focusing on music and his passions. His silence spoke volumes, further cementing his image as someone who valued substance over spectacle. Months later, the incident was still being referenced in discussions about celebrity culture. Jungkook's words had become a rallying cry for those who felt misunderstood or unfairly judged. Young people, in particular, found solace in his message, using it to challenge stereotypes and advocate for empathy. In the end, the night at the Latte World Tower wasn't just about Jungkook standing up to a critic. It was about breaking free from the labels that had been placed on him and showing the world that he was more than an idol. He was a person with depth, struggles, and a voice that deserved to be heard. And as the world continued to watch, one thing became clear. Jungkook wasn't just a member of BTS.